Alright, it's finally time to make the level 70 priority list. I'll make 3 tier lists, one for PvE, one for PvP, and one for those who want to focus on both PvE and PvP, but I don't recommend you guys to focus on both. The first tier list is going to be for PvE, and I'm going to be mostly focused on the incentive trophy rewards. The reason why I'm only going to focus on these 3 content is because every other content in the game does not reward you for getting a better score or faster clear. And the most important one is going to be Ritual Miracle, because it is a race to see who can get the lowest turn possible. The person who got 4 turn APEP like 10 months ago is still rank 1 for APEP, because there's no lower turn count than 4 turns. So that's the reason why I put Ritual Miracle as the utmost priority. The next one is going to be False Auto Fantasy, and then lastly going to be for Shadow Bosses. You don't need to rush Shadow Bosses because there's no cap, right? You can always just go higher than someone. Highest value is going to be a unit that has multiple uses and they are the best in slot. Second tier, really good value. They are really good for some of the contents and best in slot for some others. Decent, they are the best in slot for one content and maybe good for some other contents. Now for the last tier, super niche, they are the best in slot for one content, but their stats don't matter that much. For example, if you already have enough damage on Ophelia, you don't need to arse level 70 here for Yinglong, right? They are the best in slot, but their stats really depend. You don't need to go any further if you don't have to. And most of the Esper, if not all, are gonna be mostly DPS, because supports do not care about stats. When you level 70 a support, it's only just for survivability. You don't really get a better score or faster clear. So you're gonna want to level 70 DPS Espers so you can clear faster and also get a better score and get more rewards along the way, right? And I'm also going to be treating the new legendary level 1 as the most scarce resource in the game right now, because we don't know how often they're going to give out the resource. It might be 1 level 70 per month, or it could also be 1 level 70 per 2 months. We don't know just yet, right? Alright, honorable mention, Leora. She is the second best wave clearer for Chronos. If you have Sloan, she's useless, so she will not make it to the list. Next honorable mention is going to be Liam. If we ever go back to Sonica Team 1 with Liam, then he's going to be super niche, but for now, his stats don't matter that much. Meta Liling right now only has one use in PvE, which is in Forbiter, and he is also not the best as well. Alright, let's go on to the super niche tier. The first one I'm going to talk about is actually Embla. Right now, Embla is only being used for Forbiter and Dark Starlord, and for both of those bosses, she is the worst performing team. In Forbiter, she can get maximum 60 million, and in Dark Starlord, 40 to 50 million. So longevity wise, in PvE, she does not have that much longer. If we get a better DPS for False Auto Fantasy, she will be completely stripped off of her PvE usage at this point. Next super niche Esper is going to be Ophelia. Like I said, for Yinglong, she is going to be crucial, but you can get the stats required to one-shot the boss even at level 60. If you already have enough damage to one-shot the Yinglong or the boss, then you don't need to level 70 her. Next Esper is going to be Brewster. Brewster currently is the best in slot for APEP, but once again, same case for Ophelia. If you have enough damage, then level 70 Brewster does not really matter that much. If we ever get a 3 turns APEP, Brewster will be in the team because he doesn't take a turn to do his damage, right? He's slightly higher than Ophelia in that case, and Embla as well, because again, he is a mainstay for APEP. Next Esper is actually Fushi. Again, same with Embla, and if Embla falls out of meta, Fushi will also follow suit, so he's going to be the same as Embla. Alright, now on to the decent tier. It's going to be Mateo. Now you might think I'm crazy. Mateo is part of the best team in False Auto Fantasy, but that's it. He is only ran in False Auto Fantasy and nothing else. Not in Ritual Miracle, not in Shadow Bosses. But longevity wise, in False Auto Fantasy, he does have pretty long, I'd say, because the team is pretty compact, right? You can't really swap out anyone for Mateo because he gains a lot of AP and he works perfectly well with Lu Sheng. But again, he's going to be only in decent tier because he only has one use, which is in False Auto Fantasy. Next one is going to be Yuhime, same tier as him. Currently used in 2 out of the 3 bosses in False Auto Fantasy, but that's about it as well. Next Esper in the decent tier is going to be Ming Shuo. He is currently the best DPS for Shadow Fire. And before Lapis is released, he is the second best DPS for Shadow Stream. So level 70 will benefit you for 2 of the Shadow bosses, which is pretty good. And you also get an upgraded leader skill as well, from 25 to 30% speed lead. Ggez will also go into the same tier because she is the best DPS for, what's the boss? Shadow Glow. I think Ggez will have a really long lifespan for Shadow Glow because she is very unique. Her S3 will always reset when you can't land the debuff, right? Or when you fail to land the debuff. So she's one of the strongest DPS for damage per turn Esper because her S3 does not have any cooldown. Now onto the really good value. The first unit I'm going to talk about is Sloan. She is the best unit for Chronos. Getting her to level 60 will allow you to get 4 turns of Chronos easier, and maybe even potentially 3 turns of Chronos. If you get some lucky Avatar procs, you can definitely kill Chronos in 3 turns. And she is also the second best team for all 3 of the Force of Fantasy bosses. For Forbiter, her team can score between 60 to 70 million, probably even 80 million if you have an R2 Shuanpin. And then for Sonica, her team can score, my R5 Sloan can score 130, I think the highest was 130. So if you have an R6 Sloan, you can maybe score 140 to 145. And then for Dark Starlord, my R5 is scoring about 90 to 95 maximum. So R6 Sloan can probably reach upwards of 110 to 115 million. Next, Esper, the only support in this tier list, Feng Shun. Now, he's here because his stats is going to be crucial for you to get a 5 turns Yinglong. One of the main criteria for 5 turns Yinglong is for you to have really beefed up Feng Shun and Elif, because you can clear the first wave within 1 turn. And not just that, he is also the best, currently the best DPS for Shadow Stream before Lapis was released, right? Once Lapis is released, she is probably going to be the best DPS. For now, he is the best DPS for Shadow Stream, and he is run in all Force of Fantasy teams. Longevity wise, in Force of Fantasy, I think he's going to last until the game dies. There's no support like Feng Shun. He heals, he does damage, he offers buffs, he defense breaks, he heals. You'll be able to get maybe about 20 million throughout your Force of Fantasy teams. And lastly, the highest value unit, you already know it, it's Elif. Best DPS for Force of Fantasy, best DPS for APAP, so if APAP 3 turns ever comes around, she will be there. Best Esper for Yinglong, 5 turns is crucial to have an R6 Elif. Best Esper for Shadow Gale as well. So she is the best in slot for 3 contents and the best DPS for Force of Fantasy as well, for all 3 bosses. But keep in mind, before you level 70 her, you're gonna be changing your Mateo relics as well, because she's gonna have almost 42,000 HP. You're gonna need to run Mateo on HP main. You can no longer run attack main, I think. If you don't have an R6 Elif, it's best to wait until you get an R6 Elif and then use your level mons to level 70 Elif, just because of how much value she offers. Oh, I forgot Lapis. She's not out yet, but I think she's gonna be the best unit for Shadow Stream. If she is, she's gonna go into decent. I am highly skeptical that she's gonna be good for Force of Fantasy because the team that she needs is crazy. There's not a lot of slots to go around to make her work in Force of Fantasy, I think. If she is the best DPS for Shadow Stream, she's gonna land into decent. Now on to PvP. This one is gonna be slightly different. I'm gonna base my judgment on how well the unit can solo carry and how good their longevity is in PvP. Now, for the lowest value, first Esper I'm gonna talk about is Nathaniel. At level 60 R6, he already has enough stats to one-shot the entire team, or cripple them enough for you to kill off the rest, right? The problem with him is that in PvP, he can get stunned really easily. And if he gets like petrified by Chu Yao or taunted by Ggez, it doesn't matter how much stats he has, he's not going to do anything. He's only there to bomb the enemy Esper, and at level 60 is already enough for him to bomb the entire team or cripple them enough. Next one is going to be, unfortunately, Jin Chu. He can still somewhat solo carry in Point War, but it's really tough for him to work in like beatbout or knockout because you can't use your own relics, right? But most PvP Espers right now just completely outstat him. I think these are the only low value Espers The rest are not worth it. Now, decent, I'm gonna put Lu Shang first. The only reason he's in decent is because it helps him survive more. If you have his Divinate and he starts spamming his S3, he is an Avatara Magnet. So the level 70 stats is gonna help him survive better. And in PvP, his longevity I think is really good. His support, his buffs is pretty insane for all Espers, be it fighter, defender or supports themselves. And he has really strong debuff as well, silence. Most Espers are not immune to silence, they are either immune to stuns or incapacitation, but silence will still go through. Next Esper is going to be Lian, again a support. She doesn't have that much carry potential, and what I mean by that, she's not going to solo the enemy team, right? She does help your team survive. Extra stats will help her heal more, survive more, and longevity wise, she has pretty good longevity. But again, for carry potential, you're not going to get a lot out of her. Same goes for Sakura, she has a really good longevity. Carry wise, she's actually pretty good. If you run her in a Wu Yu team plus Lu Shang, she can sometimes solo a Momo. She's one of those Espers that can carry the team while also being a support. And the last unit in the decent tier, I'm gonna put Iki. Right now, Iki is more of a situational pick. If the enemy has Momo, he's a pretty decent pick, but he's no longer the main meta in PvP. Longevity wise, I do think he has a still pretty long lifespan in PvP because of all of his debuffs, buff removal, the HP cap reduction, those are pretty big. Actually, I lied. Mingxiu is also in decent tier. You get upgraded speed lead, which is nice, and he's also pretty decent for beat bout. Not the best, not the main meta. Point war, he's really good, but for point war, there's a lot of Espers that are really good, right? Now moving on to the really good tier. First unit I'm going to talk about is going to be Wu Yu. She still has a very long lifespan in PvP, mainly because she is a support for all defender Espers. As long as defenders are meta, she will always be in the team. Carry potential wise, well, the defender teams literally cannot exist without Wu Yu. Wu Yu makes it so that defender Espers cannot be defense broken, which is why it's so hard to kill off Wu Yu teams. And damage wise, she is still rank 1 in PvP. If it weren't for Zihi. Again, if Zihi didn't exist in PvP right now, she would still be the main meta. That's how crazy she is. And even with Zihi in the team, the enemy can still sometimes die from the true damage that they do when they do an AoE attack onto the enemy Wu Yu team. Because Wu Yu gives all the defender Espers retaliation with their defense onto the enemy as true damage. Still pretty high up there in the PvP meta. And again, longevity, I think she's gonna stay in PvP for a very long time. Next Esper is going to be Momo and Suizai. Suizai is slightly better right now for PvP meta. They are run in the same team, which is the Lu Shang team. Carry potential wise, again, they are pretty crazy. They can solo 1v5 an entire team. If they have enough stacks of Lu Shang, they can pretty much just solo the entire enemy team. Next one is going to be Meta Liling, and only if you have him at R5 or above. Actually, no, I think I'm going to put him in decent because longevity-wise, I think he has the same as Momo and Suizai. Actually, no. He has slightly less because he doesn't have any self-sustain. He only has shield, whereas these two has self-sustain, right? Yeah, I'm actually going to drop him down to decent. Longevity-wise, he is lower than these two, so he's going to go down. Next Esper is going to be Daji. Even after 1 year, she is still the meta in PvP. Not the main meta, but she is still up there. Her debuff makes it so that she has a very long lifespan in PvP. As long as the unit isn't debuff immune, her debuff is going to be detrimental. But she will slowly fall out of meta when we get new Espers that are immune to debuffs or negate debuffs. This one is also immune to debuffs. She's slowly going to be falling out of the meta. Next is going to be Yuime. Not because of her stats, but because of her leader skill. She has the highest leader skill in the game, and if you level 70 her, you go from 25% to 30%. Having the best speed lead means that as long as a meta turn 1 Esper exists, Moriyama, she will always be in the meta. So her lifespan in PvP is very long. Okay, I'm kind of conflicted. Moriyama, I want to put him in really good, but I think I'm actually going to bump him down to decent. Okay, so the reason why I think he's in decent is because he does not need the level 70 stats. If he wants to one-shot in an Esper, he will one-shot that Esper. The only condition you need to meet is to have higher Esper than the enemy. And the only unit that he struggles against is Suizai. Outside of Suizai, and actually Zihi as well. Because sometimes if the Zihi has D6, you can sometimes have some trouble to one-shot her. So his level 70 is mostly going to be used to counter these two units. Every single other unit in the game, he can just one-shot without worry. As for Zihi, I'm also kind of conflicted. I want to put her in really good, but I think I'm going to put her in decent. Longevity-wise, I do believe that she has more time than all of these Espers, except for maybe Wu Yu and this one. But in terms of carry potential, you won't get much out of her stats. Getting more stats will only make her survive longer. One reason you want to level 70 here is mostly just to help her survive against Murayama. Again, at D6 with a Lian, you have a pretty good chance of surviving a Murayama. But in my opinion, she's gonna go to decent tier. And finally, the highest value tier is gonna go to no one. I don't believe PvP has the highest value unit right now, or at the very least, I'm not confident enough to say one unit has the highest value in PvP. Chu Yao is going to go to really good. He's one of the best values in my opinion because longevity wise, this guy has not fallen off one bit. You see all of this DPS right here, Momo, Suizai, Daji, Meta Liling, at one point this guy as well, are all linked to Chu Yao. They are so broken because of Chu Yao. They cannot be created on, they cannot be debuffed pretty much. Oh, and Jinshu as well. These two used to be a duo, but again, at this point, Jinshu is not really that good. Longevity-wise, this guy is insane for PvP. Has not dropped one bit, and going from level 60 to level 70 will improve his leader skill. Once again, speed lead for PvP is the most impactful. Most of the time, if you mirror match, the one who goes first is going to win. But you have a level 70 Chu Yao, you will go first, which significantly increases your chance to win. And in PvP, Chu Yao actually does decent damage, unlike in PvE, because you can land Calamity debuff on enemies in PvP, right? Whereas in PvE, most of the places you're going to use him in is going to be bossing contents, which you cannot land the Calamity debuff. And I think this is it for PvP. Again, I don't think any unit for PvP is the highest value right now, because PvP meta changes very quickly. At one point, Momo was the best DPS, and then Suizai came out. Momo has now been replaced. She's still runnable, but most people who have R6D6 Suizai run him over Momo. I don't think I missed anyone. I don't think the rest are worth it to level 70. For the final tier list, for those who want to focus on PvE and PvP, which again, I highly do not recommend you guys to do that. Pick one, focus on that, and that's it. I'm only going to give you a few suggestions. Number one is going to be Daji. She's really good in PvP. She's the best in slot for Shadow Glow. Next one is going to be Mingxiu. Best in slot for Shadow Fire. One of the best in slot for Shadow Stream as well. And in PvP, he is decent. He's not the best, but he's still decent, right? Next Esper is going to be Yuhime in the same tier as this guy. Again, like I mentioned just now, her speed lead is going to be very good for PvP. And she is very good for False Total Fantasy as well, for two of the bosses. And the last Esper is going to be Meta Liling, but only if you have him at R4. Again, he's pretty decent for Phobiter, but without his R4, he's not even going to be on the list. So if he's at R3 or below, don't even bother. This is the only suggestion I'm going to give you if you want to focus on both PvE and PvP. And that's it for the tier list. Once again, this is for PvE. This is for PvP. Again, I do not believe that PvP has the highest value unit to level 70 right now, because of how the meta always changes in PvP. For both PvE and PvP, this is going to be it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Did I cook or am I cooked? That's about it. Ciao.